Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, KB reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? Is real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Til Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time or thereabouts. John Saponaro coming to you guys from North Hollywood, California, and that means my co-host, Matt Ibanez, holding things down back in New Jersey. Ibby, I don't know how to start the show. I thought the show was going to feel a little different this week. We had plans to do something different this week. Slightly. Yeah. We have a great guest this week who is still going to do the show with us, despite the kind of change in tenor of what we thought the focus might be. Our viewership numbers look like they're a little sluggish, which I don't blame people right now.
I don't blame them.
27 people when we started the show. Last week when we started the show, I think we had about 400. So I don't know, man. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But before we get into any of that, how you feeling, man?
John, I was having a very good day, and I'll get into that story in a little bit because it's very funny, especially based off of our guest today. But I'm okay. The team that we love and root for and watch on a daily basis is kind of, boring me. I guess that's the word that's very popular right now. It's just a boring game and a boring team to watch, but we're here to talk about it because that's what we do, because we love it no matter what, even though it's difficult at this point. But other than that, I'm doing okay. As always, red lights on. It's Wednesday. It's time to do a show. Love our guest, 3-time guest coming up in a moment. Now, let me ask you something, John. Do you think I should hold that story from today, or should I bring it now? What do you think?
I would hold the story.
I'll hold it.
I would hold the story for a bit. Shout out, before we bring on our guest, shout out to everybody in the chat. We have Jeff Cohen, Paulie S, Aunt Rivera, Subway to Shea. Speaking of guests who have been on the show, we have Clink, we have Truman Quinn. Did I say Jeff Cohen? Whatever. If I did, I'll say it again. We have Armand, Brad, Rosie is in the house, Ethan. And that looks like it right now, but in all seriousness, the numbers will climb as far as the chat and the viewership goes. But shout out to Brad for saying this team is boring and fading. I would agree with both of those sentiments. And I think Truman is joking, but Truman's saying, I'm just watching the game now. Please, no spoilers. You know what? Good luck. Good luck. I
God
hope
bless, man. God bless.
I hope that's not real. But you know what? If it is, man, oh man. Oh, we have ESB checking in saying just reposted the stream. Appreciate that over on the Twitter side. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Brandon.
Brandon, for going ahead and doing that. So without further ado, let's get into our guest. You guys know him from SNY. You guys know him from the Mets pod. You guys know him for covering the Mets minor league system better than anybody, for my money, in the game that does it. That's why Ibby is wearing the very appropriate St. Lucie Mets hat. Come on. It is PSL from St. Lucie, from PSL to Shea himself. We got the one and only Joe Demayo. Joe, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
What's up, Joe?
Hey guys, good being on. And I was watching as obviously you kicked off the show. I see this nice video package that you have at the beginning, and I'm a 3-time guest and I can't make the opening montage. That was gonna be my complaint. But then 1 minute ago, you're like, well, we got like 20 people watching instead of 400. So I'm feeling like that's on me. So maybe I didn't earn it. I don't know. But anyway, it's good to be here and good chatting with you guys.
Oh, my God.
Listen,
Too
man,
funny,
love having you on. I do not think
Always.
that the lower viewership at the moment is reflective of your appearance. I do think
No.
it's very reflective of the New York Mets and their state of play. So let's talk about this really quickly. Instant reaction. Mets get swept at home by a team that is scrappy, a team that does some things well, but a team that I think we could all agree the Mets are better than, especially post-trade deadline. The Mets should be better than in every way, shape, or form. Joe, I know these terms get thrown around a lot, but I'll just ask you for this season, in the context of where the Mets are right now, not compared to other low points at any other season, is this rock bottom for the 2025 Mets to this point?
Feels like it, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's been bad for a bit. And when you look at, and I put on Twitter this morning, the stats of all the hitters in the lineup over the last month, and Jeff McNeil with like a 699 OPS is the best of them all. Soto's like 650, Alonso 620, Lindor 655, Nimmo 670 or something like that. And here's the reality. We spend a lot of time, and I am habitually on Twitter, so I'm seeing everything. We spend a whole mess of time complaining about the starting rotation and, the stars don't go deep enough, or Frankie Montas is a big problem, or Clay Holmes is cooked, all this stuff. The reason the Mets aren't winning baseball games is because they are paying a lot of money to some very good hitters that are not hitting. And it's a frustrating time for sure. And, I'm trying to be as even as I can. Like I am not the scream and shout kind of guy, even when I'm upset, but I'm particularly annoyed today, I think would be a good way to describe it. And yeah, it feels like they're going through the motions. Like when I watch this series, there's no fire, no real juice. It just felt like they're just playing, they're going out, and some hustle, some don't hustle. Sometimes you run, sometimes you don't. And I don't know what needs to wake this team up. And, there's a lot of options. And trust me, I see everyone saying just fire Eric Chavez. It's not the solution I think people think it is, but something needs to wake them up. And this may be sad as a Mets fan saying, I kind of wanted them to get no hit today in hopes that it would be the punch in the face that would just wake them up. But
You're not alone there.
I don't know. It's a tough time. But at my core, I still kind of side on there's too many dang good players on this team for this to just keep going. But you can only say that for so long.
Yeah, look, Joe, you bring up so many things that we want to talk about in the context of this show. Again, trying to not have the immediacy bias of just watching a boring, listless team get saved from a no-hitter in the 11th hour the way we did. But again, like to your point, just kind of diagnosing what's been going on for a long time now. It's been weeks. It's been over a month where the Mets have played poorly, and down to competition doesn't even begin to describe it. They play bad. They pitch bad. They hit bad against everyone right now. So, Joe said it. You kind of agreed. I tweeted it. Most people, kind of understood where I was going with this. Some people didn't, but look, I won't root for my team to get no hit. I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, don't do well, like actively while watching the game. But what I said, and this might be a semantics argument for some folks, I said, part of me wants them to get no hit. This was when they were about, 10 or 11 innings of no hits dating back to yesterday's game. So it's not like I'm waking up in the morning saying, wow, I hope this guy throws a gem against my team so they could really get this gut punch. It's while they were already over a full game of being no hit spread across 2 games and damn near about to be no hit, where I share the sentiment with Joe. I listened to a little bit of Locked On Mets with Ryan Finkelstein, where the title of his show was, were the Mets better off getting no hit today? Where do you stand on this? I think, look, I don't know if it would have worked. I don't know if it would have done something, but I think we're talking whether or not this is rock bottom. I think they get no hit. There's no question about it.
Right.
Today is rock bottom.
Yeah, I just think I'm with you guys. I feel that something like that, I wanted it to happen. Again, love my team. We all do. We want them to win ball games. We want them to get better. But at the same time, we've been watching some really bad baseball for a while now. And you would think something like that happening is, as you guys have already alluded to, the punch to the gut, the punch to the face, the slap, whatever you want to call, whatever you want to use. It's gotten to this point where it's like, I wanted it to happen because maybe, just maybe, you finally say, okay, this is the bottom. The only way we can go now is up. Let's get to work. Let's figure this out. But they score. They get the home run. It's a meaningless. I laughed at someone in one of my group chats saying how it was a very Lucas Duda-esque home run. Just a random one run. A solo shot, whatever. I thought that was a great comment. I laughed pretty hard at that one. But I know people are just digging in on like people smiling and things of that nature. But all in all, I wanted it to happen mainly because I want some life. And I thought, Joe, I thought your tweet was spot on when you said that you're watching guys going through the motions and it's listless and things like that. And I feel the same way. Like I've comped this team weeks ago now. I thought when we had Tony Metro on, I thought that Yankee series, I thought that was the wake-up call that this team needed to finally spark and get things moved. They look sharp. They look better. We've seen how the Yankees have played. Obviously, maybe it was just smoke and mirrors, nothing that special. But prior to that series, I had said that this team was giving me a lot of feelings as a viewer when I sit on my couch and I watch these games from 23. Like I keep on saying it's going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but it never did. And I was just watching boring baseball and it was a chore to get through it. And now I'm feeling the same way and it's coming back. And it's just like, we can talk about the offense all we want and how it's been X amount of weeks or whatever. But when you really look at it, and again, we don't want to say take away because it's ridiculous for an argument, but without Lindor and Alonso's hot streaks to start the season, this offense has been extremely streaky from the get-go. This team has been all pitching. So when I see comments on our stuff where it's like, oh, the super bullpen blew this game. No, they didn't. Like last night's game. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. And I chirp back at that person pretty quickly because it's like they did their job. Like I don't care if someone gives up a run. You got to score runs. You have to hit the put the ball in play. Team's not doing it. I wanted the no hit to happen because I thought it would be a wake up call. Ultimately you avoid it, whatever. But in general, this team needs something because this is bad baseball.
It is horrendous baseball. A couple comments, including a super chat that I'll use as the segue to our next conversation. Stevie Mac just saying, what are hits? What are they even? I don't know. I've heard of these things called hits, but I'm not seeing them, certainly. We have Brad saying the big bat needed wasn't Mullins. I'm going to keep that starred because we'll get back to that in a second. But
right.
Patty in NYC, PB
hey,
with
Patty.
the $5 super chat. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
saying,
Patty.
what happened in mid-June that turned the switch off on our top 4 veteran hitters? I mean, with the exception of Soto, who carried that through June. Joe, when you look at this team was sold to us, all of us as fans in the offseason, as a lineup that could compete with anybody in the National League, certainly, and maybe even anybody in baseball. And obviously, when you add Juan Soto and you bring back Pete Alonso to a team that already has Francisco Lindor, that doesn't sound crazy. But it was banking on some heavy lifting from Vientos to repeat 2024, for Francisco Alvarez to regain his rookie form, for Brett Beatty to take the next step, for anything to come out of the center field platoon, for the DH platoon of Winker and Marte to stay healthy and stay effective. And so I know the onus is on the guys paid the big bucks, the top 4 of the lineup, and they have not been good enough. But I think when you look, it's spread out throughout this entire lineup where I think it's flawed team building. And I wanted Stearns and I love Stearns, but I'm not an apologist for Stearns. And I think the Mets kind of hamstrung themselves, if we're being honest, by really not having a lot of places to pivot to. And you saw that by the time the deadline rolled around and it was like, well, maybe we should get a bat. And it's like, yeah, they needed to get a center fielder, but was it really Cedric Mullins? And I know nobody else was out there. And I listened to your show the other day where it's like, you can't complain about the Mets not getting somebody who wasn't traded. But I feel like if you go all the way back to the offseason, this team brought in Juan Soto. We were all elated. They kind of sort of almost didn't bring back Pete. And then where would we be? And it seemed like that was it when there were maybe some other things they could have done then. So taking all of that into account with Patty's comment here of where has this team fallen apart at the seams offensively? Were we all wrong in March when we thought this team was going to be a powerhouse lineup? Or is there something else that has happened along the way that has made this seem less than what we would have expected?
Probably a mix of both, to be honest. Like, I mean, let's also call a spade a spade. I thought there was probably like a little regression coming for Mark Vientos. I didn't think that meant he was going to be bad for most of the year. And for all the things going on, Mark Vientos might be swinging the best stick on the team right now for the last couple of weeks. And so he seems to be turning a corner. But you're banking on a guy who had the year that he did last year, and specifically the postseason that he had. When he had the postseason that he had, I was sold that Mark Vientos has arrived as a legitimate power threat that can hit in the middle of a big league lineup. And you add a guy like Juan Soto, you keep someone like Pete. I don't know, as far as like flawed team building, you use that term. I think you could probably make the argument on the DH side of things that they could probably just use a DH, not two DHs. Center field, I generally don't hate the concept that David Stearns likes, which is defense over offense in center field, especially when you're having Juan Soto in right field and Brandon Nimmo in left field. Makes total sense to me. The young guys for third base, like the idea was Vientos was your third baseman. So you mentioned Brett Beatty and stuff. The idea was Vientos was just your third baseman, no problem. So I don't know how much different, I guess, I would have built the team heading into the season, but the young players just haven't taken that step forward. Vientos hasn't repeated last year. Alvarez was injured and then struggled, which somewhat anticipated coming off the hamate to struggle a little bit, but it got into the field too. And now maybe he's turning the corner a little bit after a demotion to AAA Syracuse. Otherwise, like, I don't know, like off-season building, I think they built the kind of offense that should have been really good, and they've been inconsistent in the bottom half all year. And now, unfortunately, baseball is a game of inconsistency. And I think I'll always see people say, why can't the Mets just be consistent? Well, if you watch almost every team in baseball, nobody is consistent. We just watch the Mets every day. So that's why we see it. But when you have the numbers, I said at the top of the show, right? Like, you can't have all of these guys being bad at the same time. Like, if one's awesome, a couple are pretty good, and one's bad, you're okay. But they're all bad. And you're relying now on the bottom of the order that you don't have all the faith in the world in as it is.
Yeah, look, and I don't mean to dump all of that on you. It's funny, Mario checking in saying, hey, fellas, what do you think is the problem with this offense? Thanks. One, we're talking about it right now, so don't go anywhere. And two, if I knew that, maybe I could be hitting coach for the New York Mets. No, look, I think Joe makes some good points, and you know me, like, I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback this thing. Hindsight is 2020. We were all very satisfied, and how could you not be, with the moves the Mets made in the offseason? And look, to further that, to the deadline, something more recent, we're all very satisfied with the moves the Mets made at the deadline. And I tweeted something out that was like, look, you can't be unhappy with the moves the Mets did make. You can be a little maybe theoretically frustrated that they didn't make an additional one. But to Joe's point from his show earlier in the week, or I guess the end of last week, which was, again, you can't be upset about guys, the Mets not acquiring somebody who wasn't moved. And that's why I said theoretically frustrated, because you and I talked on Tuesday before the deadline. And then we did our huge super show with Mets Weekly and a bunch of other content creators as well during the deadline, where it was like, I don't know, man, they made a lot of great moves, but I would have brought in another bat if I could. I would have maybe paid a little bit more to try to get somebody. We don't know if that's available, but I'll bring this comment back up from Brad, which is the bat we needed wasn't Mullins. They needed somebody to play center field. It can't be Jeff McNeil every day or even 65, 70% of the time. So they addressed that, and I'm happy, but I wanted an upside bat. And if it wasn't going to be, if you could never get Robert and you could never get Buxton, then maybe the conversation to have with Baltimore was give us Mullins Mullins and Laureano. Give us Mullins and O'Hearn. Maybe get somebody else in here that could provide a little bit more relief offensively, because I don't think it's enough what they did. And so I don't think that it's, I think it's unfair to critique the Mets for what they did, but I think it's okay to be a little upset with what they didn't do, because the early return since the trade deadline is, the bullpen's great. Try getting to them with a lead.
Right. And I just think that, ultimately this team needed bullpen badly, and they went out and they accomplished it in spades. So you were happy. I was happy. We were all happy with the names that were brought in. I had been saying for weeks now that I thought that a bat was needed, but I preface that by also saying I don't know if that bat is there. I don't know who it is. Maybe something can happen, but going in, I had already said, like, I don't think this bat exists. And based off of how this team is constructed and what the areas that they needed, that bat just wasn't there. And we can't complain about it, because if it's not there, what are you supposed to do? Like, you can't just sit here and just constantly complain about it when there was nothing out there to attain. They improved in areas that they could based off of what was available. So I'm very happy with that. Is Cedric Mullins the answer? I had said on the show when it happened, I thought that it's a fit, solid defender, not the greatest, but a solid defender, can play every day. Okay. But ultimately he wasn't going to be this world beater. And my biggest fear was plugging him into the bottom half of the lineup. I had said that when he goes cold, it's cold. And when you mix that in with what we have, the inconsistencies of the back end of this lineup to this point in August now, I thought that could be potentially a recipe for disaster. But I understood the move. I understood why he did it, and it's the only option that you had. I didn't want Jeff McNeil playing center field in October. Like, I didn't want it. It didn't make sense to me. So it's fine, but ultimately you got better in the areas that you could. We can't sit here and complain about the what ifs, because there was nothing there. There wasn't.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with that. If you guys are watching live, this is Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week. Hit a thumbs up. Give us a like on the video if you like what you're listening to. Our guest this week, Joe Demayo from the Mets Pod. We are going to talk a little bit later on about some of the stuff that's gone on, in the fallout of the trade deadline. From the Mets perspective, we all know how good the players they acquired are, but we want to talk to Joe on his bread and butter, which is the prospects that they gave up. And again, the tenor of this show has changed a bit because the Mets had an abysmal game to end an abysmal series to end an abysmal homestand, but we will get to that stuff coming up in a little bit. Joe, you mentioned this guy, and it's been a topic to varying degrees. Game for War says it. We all know the problem, the hitting coaches and the philosophy. You mentioned Eric Chavez by name. He is the hitting coach. He also is assisted or complimented, or his partner in crime, whatever, is Jeremy Barnes. Look, none of us like to call for anybody's job. You don't want to see people get fired. I understand that. I'm a bit more tongue in cheek about the things, that I say on Twitter as far as that stuff is concerned. But look, I think they're getting to a point now where we know Chavez can't take the at-bats. We know Barnes can't take the at-bats. But if the offense is this bad and underachieving this poorly, with this amount of money invested, with this amount of talent, and the runners in scoring position thing, it's not new. It happened last year for times. It happened the year before that for chunks of time. Sometimes don't you just have to make a change for change's sake as far as the hitting coaches go?
I mean, I always find this to be a complicated discussion.
Sure.
Because when an offense is clicking, the hitting coach gets no credit. It is
Correct.
the players that are doing the thing. And when the offense is struggling, I mean, we're calling out players here, obviously, on this show, but in general, then it's all of a sudden, what's going on with the hitting philosophy? The hitting coach needs to go. And, maybe that is the shakeup. Like, I'm not opposed to making a change at hitting coach, but at the same time, is that going to magically make Juan Soto hit with runners in scoring position like he hasn't so far this year? Is that going to turn Pete Alonso's month around or Lindor's month around? And the thing that we deal with here too is the time of the year that we're in. When coaches are let go, it's usually like no later than June. So we're here recording on August 6th, and all right, you let Eric Chavez go. Are you letting Jeremy Barnes go too? So you're letting the hitting coach and the assistant hitting coach go? And if
Right.
you're letting them both go, what are you doing? You're just promoting the AAA hitting coach. Problem there. Who becomes the AAA hitting coach? I know that
Right.
fans don't care because
Right.
they just focus on the Mets. The AAA team needs a hitting coach too. And you cannot also, you're not bringing someone off the street, right? And just being like, hey, welcome. You're now the Mets hitting coach. Jump in the middle of a pennant race and try to teach a new system to these players. So it's a convoluted discussion. And I
Sure.
would say that you could do it. And maybe that is like a little kick in the butt or something.
Mhm.
But I would say, based on how this year has gone, I wouldn't feel confident that this is going to be the hitting coach situation as we head into 2026. But I struggle to see this, what the solution is for the rest of 2025 if you get rid of these guys. And that's not the biggest compliment to them or anything, because obviously things aren't going well. But I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. And I understand the fans' reaction is like, do something, fire somebody. Something needs to happen. This isn't good. And that's not always the best solution.
Yeah, look, it's hard to argue with that. And I think you made a great point about the time of year. And I think you're right. I think ultimately we're going to see these guys play out the string to whatever end. And who knows, maybe the Mets miraculously turn it around. And look, the Mets have...
And it wouldn't even be that much of a miracle, right?
Sure,
if we
sure,
think
sure.
about
Right.
it, like this team is a very talented team. It's just not putting it together consistently.
I agree with you there. And there's still, 47 games or 48 games or whatever it is left. And there are 2 games out of leading the division. And there's still double-digit games over 500. Like, that's all... that's all part of it, right? And I just think sometimes, and you guys both know, and because we've all dealt with this, like from the QBC, Joe, from your show with the Mets pod, and we've all interacted with players, we've all interviewed players, and so sometimes I think what fans will call for is stuff that, like, Ibby, we know they're not going to do, right? Like, they're like, I just want to hear Mendy say that this guy's got to be better, and it's like, they're not going to do that. No manager in 2025 is going to do that unless a player makes an egregious mistake. Doesn't run the pop-up out and they wind up losing.
Throws his glove into the stands.
Throws his glove into the stands. Something so egregious that everybody would agree, even the player. It's like, this is not going to work. So I guess when I advocate, Ibby, for, maybe Chavez needs to go, it's because we all agree, or we've all sort of agreed, that there needs to be some shock to the system for this team in 2025. And I think the only place they can go is to fire the hitting coach. That's the only, otherwise everything is just going to stay the same. Because to Joe's point, there's nobody in the lineup that's going to come up. Like, there's nobody in AAA that can come up right now and provide a spark to the offense. So to me, I look at it and I'm like, it probably won't do anything. It's probably not going to change much, but it is something. I don't know.
No, and like, I think Joe's point about, the timing makes a lot of sense, but I think for a lot of people, like, you see all these things happening, and the point I always make on the show is, as much as everything is about the hitter, you're in the box, you have to hit, you have to, like, baseball is a very individualized sport. Like, everyone always talks about team, but it's a very individualized sport. You have to throw, you have to hit, you have to catch, you have to run, you have to do all of these things. So the fact that a lot of people put it always on the hitting coach or the pitching coach when things go bad is probably improper. But at the same time, like I've always said, I feel that if you are in charge of something and it is consistently failing, eventually, it's the nature of the beast. A head is going to roll from that spot because, look, they can't fire the entire team. Can't do it. A lot of money involved. You can't just say, I'll get rid of all these guys. And to John, your point, you're not bringing anybody up right now. David Stearns, as I said multiple times, doesn't lie to us. He's already said, doesn't view anybody from the hitting side coming up and helping this team. Listen when the man speaks. He's not lying to you. So when all those things are going on, it's like, can a firing happen? Sure, it can. Will it make sense? It could. I've said multiple times, I want it to happen. Not because I want someone to lose their job, but because I'm tired of the talking point. I want it to end. I want to see what happens with this team if a new voice, like everyone's clamoring for, does come in. Is it really going to make a difference, or is it not? Timing matters. Joe, you're 100% right on that. But for me, I'm I'm beat down. As a fan, I am beat down from this entire conversation. I've said to John multiple times, I hate when we have to talk about it, even though it's very relevant right now because this team is not hitting. But I'm tired of the hitting coach discussion. Just like either say something or get rid of, or just like, I want it to end. Please just put me out of my misery, or I can't take it anymore. I can't take it.
D with the comment, I want it to end.
I want it to end. I want it to end.
If you just take this comment out of context, it's very bleak, Gibby. It's a very bleak comment.
Well, that's how a lot of Mets fans are probably feeling after this last week. That's for sure.
That's fair. Look, again, Joe, a lot of buzzwords get thrown around, and I think some things are kind of unfair to the point that I was just making, where it's like, you know, we know that a guy's not going to throw somebody under the bus. Like a manager's not going to throw somebody under the bus. A teammate is not going to throw somebody else under the bus. So people say, like, I want to see more fire. I want this. It's like that stuff is largely irrelevant to me. Certain parts of it are just things fans want to see. And look, we're all fans, but again, the three of us have had a little bit of a different connection to this team. And so to just provide a little bit of perspective as best we can, I say that not to put down anybody who's sitting there and also fanning on the other side of the screen. But I think there are a couple things that are very valid. And maybe, again, it's a semantics argument for some people, but I think this team is too good to be this bad, and I think they're too bad to be this good. I think that's what they have shown over the course of whatever 100 and some odd games.
So they're mediocre.
Yeah, and I think a big problem. I think a big problem you could say is that there's no ID, there's no identity for this team right now. What do they do well that they can hang their hat on? And for me, the third one is that there isn't, I don't feel a great sense of urgency. Again, understanding that the ball players are going to go about their business, and I don't need somebody to yell and throw their hat at one of the beat writers or something from the press conference. Yeah. But I don't see a lot of urgency in how the game is being played and how moves are being made, apart from the trade deadline, which obviously has a finite amount of time with which you can work in. So how do you feel about this team having a sense of identity, and how do you feel about this team having a sense of urgency right now?
I don't know what the identity of this team is at all, honestly. You know, last year's team had an identity, and you know, we're going to be comparing 2024 and 2025 for probably a long time, depending on how this season ultimately ends. However it ends, hopefully it's a deep playoff run, and we're all, you know, convening, and the Mets made it to the NLCS again, made it to the World Series. And we're like, you remember that August show where we thought the world was basically over, and it all turned out okay. But I don't know what the identity here is. And as far as the lack of urgency, I will say recently, I have seen Mendoza manage with a little bit more urgency on his end with the bullpen usage. He is throwing these guys. He is not giving the same. He is not giving. He is not giving like, oh, you pitched today, so you can't pitch tomorrow. So he's been a little bit more aggressive, but there's only so much he can do. Like, do you want him to bench Juan Soto and play Humst? Do you want Taylor? Like,
you want Marte out there?
Yeah, I don't know what card can he really pull as far as like that urgency. To me, it falls on the coaches that are working with these players, obviously, and the players themselves. I want to see the urgency from those guys. That doesn't mean, like you said, I don't need Pete to break a bat over his leg when he strikes out, or I don't need McNeil to scream every time he gets out like he used to do. Which, by the way, a little weird that right now things are going so bad and we're not getting that Jeff McNeil. So that, to me, that's a little odd. So like, I don't need like the aesthetic of that, and that's ultimately what it is. But I want to see these guys play like they're trying to come back. With like the first game of the Cleveland series, like that gave me some promise. Even though they ultimately lost, it didn't work out. I felt some promise coming out of that, coming back from 5-1 down when they're struggling offensively. And, you know, I thought they were going to win that game, and they didn't. But it ultimately wasn't a sign of things to come based on the last 2 days where they were obviously flat in the second game and beyond flat in the third game. These players, they need to be accountable for themselves at this point, right? And they are getting, you know, I hate to do it, they're getting paid a heck of a lot of money especially the top of this order, to produce. And they need to look themselves in the mirror. And it's not like you can't have an 0 for 4 day like every player does. But you got to find a way to turn this thing around. And, we talk about approach at the plate and stuff like that. And it's just like, Chavez has to go because the approach is bad. Do you think Eric Chavez is telling these guys to just pound the ball into the dirt? Like what if
you check Twitter a lot, yeah.
Like let's live in a semblance of reality here. That's clearly not happening, but these players need to step up. And I hate to say it like just, quite so bluntly, like that's what they're here for. They're here to perform. The expectations shifted this year. You want to compare 24 and 25. 24 wasn't supposed to be good. And and their actions in the offseason prior, they didn't expect it to be good. Their actions at the deadline last year was, to me, David Stern saying, I don't really think this team's that good, but I have to do something because they're overperforming.
Sure.
And
I agree.
Now this year, the expectations shift. You sign Juan Soto to the biggest contract in American sports history. You sign Pete Alonso back for good money. And you have an aggressive deadline. It may not have been the perfect deadline where they got everything for our hopes and wishes. They didn't get a 2015 Yoenis Cespedes, but it was an aggressive deadline. And there was a lot of question coming into it, right? Where David Stearns, everyone was like, small market Stearns, he's not ready. Like I came out of the deadline saying David Stearns is ready for New York and for managing a contending team based on how he handled the trade deadline. These players just have to play better. And if the offense starts clicking, watch this team rally off a bunch of wins because this bullpen is going to shorten these games. And if the Mets are up 4-1 instead of down 4-1, they're winning those games.
Let me ask you this, Joe, really quickly, just in the sense of urgency, right? Because again, I love David Stearns. I wanted David Stearns. I'm on record saying I think David Stearns is one of the best things to happen to this franchise in recent memory. That's how much I believe in him. But I don't think that anybody is beyond criticism. One of the criticisms that I had going into the All-Star break was the Mets were consistently, which now feels like ancient history, the Mets were consistently giving up chances to win, essentially, by running out guys who maybe aren't major league arms to have bullpen game after bullpen game, when at the time, I think the only healthy starters on their 26-man roster were Frankie Montas, who just got back, and David Peterson. And it seemed like the perfect time to insert a guy like Nolan McLean or Brandon Sproat into the rotation, see what they have. Maybe they get bombed, but again, these are legit starters who are stretched out. These are guys who, they're not 19 years old, they're 24 years old, and they're in AAA and they're performing. And yeah, I get it. From a roster management perspective, you don't want to do it, to David Stern's point, for a spot start. But it seemed like it was more than a spot start. Reading the tea leaves, it looked like these are guys we might need. And I think if you make that decision, then you can kind of go into the deadline. And I know a lot of starters were not moved, so it may be a moot point when it's all said and done. But I think you have a little bit more knowledge of what you may need, how much harder you might have to push to acquire somebody, where now if McLean comes up and Brandon Sproat comes up tomorrow, well, they better be good and they better fill the void, because then where else do you go? And I'm not asking anybody to be a savior, but I think that's where some of the lack of urgency from Stearns frustrated me. And it's a month ago now, but I think that's a pretty fair criticism of him at the time.
I think that is one thing that I think when we reconvene and we talk on this show in the winter, like we usually do, or next year, like I think we will look back to that decision. And I understood his philosophy behind the decision. It wasn't just like, I'm not calling up the kids because they're not ready, or his philosophy is, and it would have been ultimately a couple starts, not like a spot start. It would have been a couple starts because Senga was on the mend. Manaea was on the mend. Like they were getting healthier and the rotation was going to round itself into shape. But we're going to look back. It's, frankly, what I'm really going to be interested to see, because I do think Brandon Sproat and or Nolan McLean will be on the Mets some point before this season ends, maybe sooner than later for one of them. And if they're really good, or one of them is really good, I think that's even more looking back to that time of be like, man, things could have been a little different if you called him up. Like, I know they have made, specifically with Sproat, he has made like changes over the last month. So he has actually physically improved. Nolan McLean has been the model of consistency all year. Like you look at, you don't scout the stat line in my world, but if you just go and type in Nolan McLean baseball reference, you're not seeing blow up starts. Like he's had a couple not great starts, but he's been consistent, especially in a league like the International League AAA. That is not an easy league to pitch in.
Ball flies.
So ball flies there. And so there definitely is an argument. And I think that is one thing we will look back on and question if this thing doesn't work out necessarily the way we hoped and thought it would. So I think this is me fence riding a little bit. I don't think you're wrong whatsoever, but I also understood what Stearns' philosophy and thought process was at the time, as frustrating as it was that it felt like, the Yankee series. I just go back to that, which ended up working out okay for them. Like they almost swept it, but I was like, oh, we're going to the Subway series with Justin Hagenman on Friday and Brandon Waddell on Sunday. That doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. And there's certainly an argument for those kids. But the positive, I guess, that I'll take is the Mets have these kids and they're coming soon and they're going to be a factor going forward. But that is one fair criticism, I think, of David Stearns.
Ibby, I know that has nothing to do with the main point we were talking about, which is the offense, obviously. But again, none of this stuff exists in a vacuum. And I think it's a hearkening back to a couple of years ago when you and I were talking on this show about, hey, just go and call up Mark Vientos. JD Davis and Dom Smith are not getting the job done as far as the DH goes. See what this guy has. And then going into the deadline, you have an opportunity to know what you really need. And look, I guess the reason why I bring it up, maybe, is because I would hate for the lineup to quote unquote snap out of it, right? What if Alonso and Lindor and Soto and Nimmo all get hot at the same time, and one or two of the kids kicks it in gear the way Alvarez and Vientos have over the last couple of weeks? Now all of a sudden you're firing on all cylinders, and again you coughed up some games earlier, and now maybe you have to address what the rotation is doing with some of the inconsistencies you're seeing and some of the non-viable pitchability from a guy like Frankie Montas.
Yeah, and we'll get into Montas, I'm sure, but I definitely think, to Joe's point before, I feel that when it comes to those guys coming up, we are going to look back on this and say, what if? And hopefully it's all for not in the terms of like a positive. Hopefully it doesn't matter in the end because they end up doing very well. But if there was one thing I did want to bring up also to Joe's point about, the pitching, the offense and things of that nature, it's a point that Friday's game where they came back, and to bring up to your point, John, also where they were giving away these games earlier on because of the pitchers that they were running out there. You look at this now and why it's so important. It really comes down to the offense in general, why it's so important for them to get going and actually hit. When a game like Friday's happens a month ago and they're down 2 runs, right? And you run out whoever from Whole Foods out there, and they go out there and they give up 3 or 4 runs, and the game's over because the offense isn't chugging along. Like, you're out of it already. It's 5-0, 7-0, whatever. Game's over. But when you make these moves and you bring in, you're able to bring in Reed Garrett earlier. You bring in Tyler Rogers. They hold the lead. They keep it manageable to where the offense can actually go out there and come back, which they did. Like, that matters, and that's why this team, when it's actually firing the way it should, that's why those moves are so important and why it works for October. I forgot whose headline it was today, but they were saying how, the Mets are a team that can be built for October, but can they get to October? And I look at it, and it's like the bullpen, in my opinion, is probably the best bullpen that we've seen in a long time for this team. But can this offense provide for them? And like doing little things like that matter. It's this offense. Like, can they do it? Like, that's really what it comes out to. I'm sorry if it's a little bit scatterbrained for me there, but that I wanted to get that point out there because I was really thinking about that on Friday, how it's like this team was actually able to hold something even though they were down, so they can actually fight back. That matters, August, September, October. They just got to hit more. That's the whole thing.
I don't think it's scattered or off topic, Joe, because I tweeted something I think during that game where it was like, you go out and you build the bullpen that Stearns, or you add to the bullpen that Stearns was able to do at the deadline. And it allows you to bring Reed Garrett in. Now, nobody's saying you're going to manage an early August game like you would Game 7 of the World Series. But realistically, when you get post-trade deadline, you start almost every day. And you already mentioned it, the urgency and the aggressiveness from Mendoza with the way he's handling his bullpen and how he's deploying these guys. Almost every day, you start to get closer and closer to that, like, hey, we're all in. We've got to win this game. We're trying to win this game because Philly lost. We're trying to win this game because Philly won, and we have to stay with them. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, I think Ibby's spot on, because you're starting to get the way baseball is now. You're starting to get to the point where you get closer and closer to that October style baseball in August, and then you get closer in September, and then obviously in October you're kind of going all in where every game becomes a must win. But again, if you can't score the runs, then this is all wasted. The moves that Stearns made, which we all agree were great, I mean, if you're going to lose that game 2-1, it doesn't really matter if you would have lost it 5-1 with Austin Warren instead of Ryan Helsley.
You're right. No, it ultimately comes down to the basic premise that is the sport of baseball. You score runs and you try not to give up a lot of them.
Yeah.
And that's the way.
The simplest form.
Yeah.
Yes.
And right now they're simply not scoring enough runs. Like, are the Mets running into some bad luck offensively? Sure, little bit. Like, they're hitting the ball pretty dang hard, but then sometimes it finds gloves, sometimes it's on the ground. Like it's
careful, Joe.
lot.
Nobody wants to hear that. Careful when you say that.
Look,
everyone freaks out when people say it.
Guess what? People can be as mad as they want. Hitting the baseball hard is very good, and I want my team doing it all the time. But then again, the Mets lost the game because Tyler Rogers gave up 3 of the softest hit balls ever. How did what's his name, Rocchio, the second one? How the hell did he flick that ball into left field? I need someone to explain that to me. But ultimately, look, this is a team that, as you said, I think it's actually perfectly said. I don't know whose headline you said it was from, but this is a team that's built for October, despite what people want to believe. And in the playoffs, even if your starter is doing really, really well, he's out after 5 innings. They're not. Bullpens win championships, not starting pitching. Like, that's the way it is in the year of 2025. It's offense and it's bullpen. The Mets have the ingredients of an offense that should be very good.
Yes.
Currently, and for the last, and honestly, throughout the whole year, it's been inconsistent. So I'm not here to say but like, if you look on like, Pete Alonso's having a really good year. He's having a really bad month. Juan Soto is having a really good year, not by his standards, but like in general, good year, having a horrendous month. Lindor probably a little under expectations, and Nimmo's having a bit of a bounce back year, to be honest, based on what he did last year. So all the ingredients are there, and like, maybe Alvarez is a postseason kind of guy. He kind of turned it on a little bit late in the postseason. Vientos, maybe he's a postseason guy, but you got to get there first. And I want the Mets to win the National League East. I don't want to just sneak into the playoffs. And I understand the format. It doesn't matter about winning divisions as much, or the bye. Like, do you want the bye? All this stuff that like is into it. And it's kind of like, oh, just get in the dance and you'll be fine. I want the Mets to be establishing themselves now, and the payrolls and everything they do suggests that's the way it should be. This should be a team that's winning the division every year, or most years winning the division. And they need the offense to get going in order for that to become a reality. And if they do, the postseason of this team, at least on paper, on the surface, has a chance to be a very successful one, because you have at least those 3 starters right at the top. Like, there's better days ahead for Kodai Senga. I think everyone feels okay about him. Maybe I'm speaking for you guys. I think there's better days ahead there. I feel good about Sean Manaea. Like, he had that bad 6th inning, but he's cruising through 5. David Peterson's been money all year. You're gonna need a 4th guy, and we'll see who that ultimately can become. But I think this team is built for October. They just need to get their heads out of their own rear end and get themselves there.
Yeah, if you guys are watching live, this is Til Mets Do Us Part on YouTube, on Twitter. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez. Our guest this week, the great Joe Demayo, aka PSL the Flushing, co-host of the Mets pod. Ibby and I are going to do a normal show here in the sense that we're going to do well over an hour, but we don't have Joe for too much longer. So Joe, I don't want to speed run through this, but as much time as we can give to something that is a little off topic, because nobody right now, with the way the Mets are playing, super cares about the things that the Mets gave up at the deadline, because people are looking at this major league team. Honestly, if people were like, none of it was worth it based on what's happened since the deadline, I don't agree, but I could see how you'd be frustrated into saying that. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the show this week, this is the first show that we're doing fully post trade deadline, where you can look at everything the Mets did. Again, you can't argue with the players that the Mets received. Gregory Soto, Ryan Helsley, Rogers and Mullins, just things the Mets needed in every single way. And so they made their team better objectively. I think we all know that. So I don't even want to talk about who we acquired. Your bread and butter is the prospects. Like I said in the open, you do it better than anybody for my money. And so I don't want to sit here and talk about these guys like crazy while the Mets are in this bit of a tailspin. But there has been some sentiment from some of the viewers and listeners of our show that the Mets, and just across Mets Twitter landscape and Mets fandom, that the Mets gave up a lot here. That the Mets, some people have gone as far to say they mortgaged the farm to make these additions that may or may not pay off by the way that the Mets are playing right now. Ibby and I have been steadfast. The Mets did not give up the farm. The Mets made necessary moves, and the Mets went basically quantity over quality, if you want to talk about dealing. So let's just overarching your view on what the Mets gave up at the deadline. I listened to your show from last week with Connor, and I thought it was tremendous. But for anybody who may not have heard it, what's your overall thoughts before we get into some guys specifically?
Where the Mets have grown so much in the last, let's call it 2 to 3 years, and so that even slightly predates Stearns, but obviously Stearns being at the helm now, the depth of this farm system has gotten so good that they were able to acquire one of the most consistent relievers in baseball in Tyler Rogers, an all-star closer in Ryan Helsley, a quality lefty reliever in Gregory Soto, and a starting center fielder for whatever you think Cedric Mullins is worth. He is a starting center fielder. And they lost. And I just recently, so if you go on my Twitter at PSL the Flushing, or you go to SNY.TV, I just updated my top 30 prospect list 2 days ago or whatever. So a post deadline update of the prospects that the Mets traded. Only one of them would have been in the top 10 of that system. So if whoever's saying they mortgaged the future, they certainly did not mortgage the future. They capitalized on the depth that they have been able to build, where one of the guys, like I even want to go, like we'll talk, I guess, some of the bigger names that people know, but I want to, in that Ryan Helsley trade, the third piece in that trade was a right-handed pitcher named Frank Ellisalt. Have you guys ever heard of Frank Ellisalt before that trade?
No,
I did not know.
So last year, Frank Ellisalt was a 19th round pick last year out of a small college. The Mets tweaked a couple things down there in Port St. Lucie. He was up to 96. Like got some interesting stuff. But that's a 19th round pick in less than 12 months, increased his value enough to be part of a trade to bring an all-star closer to a team in a market that relievers went for very high prices.
Yes.
Mason Miller. You want to mortgage the future. That's what the Padres did. The Mets hung on to my number 1 prospect, Jet Williams. They hung on to my number 2 prospect, Jonah Tong. They held on to my number 3 prospect, Carson Bench. They held on to my number 4 prospect, Nolan McLean. They held on to my number 5 prospect, Brandon Sproat. They held on to my number 6 prospect, Ryan Clifford. They held on to my number 7 prospect, Elian Pena. I can keep going. What I would say is, amongst the names, Jesus Baez would have came in number 8 on my list. So that is the highest ranked prospect that I believe they gave up. And he's a guy with talent. There's no way around it. I mean, this is bat the ball, doesn't swing and miss much, has some raw power, he's a pretty good athlete. I think he's probably like a third baseman long term. But like, that's a guy, like, you got to give something to get something. If you want to get if you want to have a trade deadline like 2024, okay, hang on to everybody, and you could get this year's Jesse Winker, and this year, like who I don't even remember who the heck else they required last year, but it was just such a small deadline. I thought it was honestly, I think it was handled excellently by Stearns. He managed this farm system really well as far as going through the trade deadline. The only trade, and I know, John, you mentioned this when you were messaging me about coming on the show. We'll talk the Tyler Rogers trade because that's the one to me that I think there's an argument that may have not been the best pure value, because I think, for lack of a better term, I think the Mets ripped the Cardinals off for Ryan Helsley. I don't think they gave up much of anything for Cedric Mullins, though that's some power reliever prospects, but you could just get those guys again. Like they're replaceable type of players. The return that they gave up for Rogers, and I think Rogers is tremendous. I love watching him pitch because one, he's really good, and two, it's really fun to watch him pitch.
Yeah.
And frankly, he's a guy, if he wants to stay in New York after this year, I don't care that he's a rental. I'll try to bring him back. But they gave up Drew Gilbert, and Blade Tidwell, and Jose Buteau being thrown in the trade was a little peculiar to me. I know there's some about roster flexibility and some weird things that kind of transpired there. But as far as Gilbert and Tidwell goes, I think people are really mad that the Mets gave those guys up because they've heard their name before and they know who they
exactly.
They know who. Drew Gilbert was the headliner for Justin Verlander. Blade Tidwell was a second-round pick who made his major league debut and wasn't awesome, but he looked like the stuff you see. There's raw stuff there. I think that's going to prove to probably be a slightly heavy return for what the Mets might get out of Tyler Rogers, but that conversation's a lot different today. If the Mets, what's it been, 7 games since the deadline, 6 games since the deadline, whatever. Like if the Mets aren't 1-5 or 1-6 since the deadline, and they're 5-1 or 4-2 or whatever, like, okay, it's now you're looking like, oh, Tyler Rogers could be a part of this team going and winning the World Series, and you don't care about the prospect cost at that point. I think Gilbert, to break him down, I think he's going to be a player at the major league level. Do I think he is an everyday outfielder? I don't. And it's because he has, at every level of the minor leagues, not been able to hit left-handed pitching. I don't know if he's going to be able to hit left-handed pitching at the major leagues if you don't do it in the minor leagues. So he might be like the long side of a platoon in the outfield somewhere. And yes, I say that word that way.
I love it. I caught what you did there.
I got it.
Tidwell, power arm. Right?
Can I ask you one thing quickly about Drew Gilbert?
Please.
I think part of the problem too is that the Mets, rightfully or wrongfully, we'll see at some point, thought that Drew Gilbert was not a center fielder necessarily. Because if he could have helped in center field, at least defensively, I think we would have saw him at some point when the Mets were rolling out Jeff McNeil out there 75% of the time. Why not call him up and just see what he's got at near 25 years old? And if he's not a center fielder, Joe, he's got no place on this team. Soto's here for 14 more years. Brendan was here for what, 6 more? That's it. Where does he go?
Right or wrong, and we will find out in due time if the Mets were right or wrong about this. They clearly were not that high on Drew Gilbert. Otherwise, he would have, to your point, come up. Center field was a black. Tyrone Taylor was playing every single day before they were finally like, oh, Jeff McNeil, I guess we'll try that. Like, if they saw Drew Gilbert, if they go ahead, Ibby.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I always say, like, when Stearns talks, listen, watch. I think I'm very big when it comes to body language. When he was asked the question pre-deadline, before he traded Gilbert, and he was asked questions about him, I thought it came across as though he didn't want to talk about it because he knew that the guy wasn't going to be here and he wasn't the answer that everyone thought he was going to be. But to Joe's point, and I've said the same thing multiple times, when someone hears a name over and over and over again, especially when you're not actually sitting there and watching minor league baseball, you hear a name, you get these ideas cooked up in your head thinking that, oh, this is going to be some superstar. What are we doing getting rid of this guy? He never had the future here, because if he was someone that could help this team right now when center field has been a black hole defensively, at least, he would have been here. The fact that he wasn't, I thought, spoke volumes, which is why I had been saying I thought he was going to get traded. I said he was going to get traded in a potential deal for Luis Robert. I got destroyed for that. And then lo and behold, he gets dealt for a 35-year-old rental reliever. So again, even lesser than what I thought he was going to get potentially dealt for. So I just thought that you were completely spot on when it came to hearing a name over and over and over again.
I thought Gilbert was a real candidate to be moved at the deadline. I thought, to your point, I don't know if it was Luis Rob. I thought it was going to be for something other than a rental reliever. I thought he was going to be maybe part of a deal to get a reliever that had maybe an extra year of control or something like that. But look, I'm part of the problem too. I do this thing. I cover prospects all the time. On the Mets pod, we go down on the farm every single week. I've talked about Drew Gilbert a million times since the Mets have gotten him. So I'm part of the problem with I guess maybe I try to not overhype people, but the hype is part of the process. So I think at its core, Gilbert is probably a long side, mainly against right-handed pitching outfielder that probably fits best in right due to his throwing arm. And he's a solid athlete. Like, he could probably kind of handle center, but he's not a true center fielder. Blade Tidwell, for me, like, it's a power arm that's, the fastball's electric. It's a plus pitch, and he just hasn't quite figured out what his best secondaries are. I think the Giants will probably eventually move him to the bullpen, and I think he's going to be pretty successful there, to be honest. I think Tidwell has a chance to be a mainstay in a major league bullpen. And then Jose Butto, we know what he is, right? Kind of your multi-inning guy, bottom part of the bullpen, so expendable to a degree. I would say overall, that is the trade that I think if we reconvene in a couple of years and we're talking about the 2025 deadline, that's going to be the one that we're like, Mets didn't necessarily get the best value there. And hopefully they win and we don't care.
Right. Joe, I mean, look, if you win a World Series, it always changes the math, right?
Exactly.
Like, nobody's going to care who you gave up. You win a World Series, automatically worth it. Does the math change for you a little bit on that deal if they re-sign Rodgers, let's say a 2-year deal?
Mm-hmm.
And they keep him. Do you then change on like, they gave up too much? Because then essentially you've got him for 2.5 years, right?
Definitely helpful. And that's one thing that I will say, and I said it on the Mets pod after the deadline. I don't care that the Mets traded for rentals, because with the culture that this team is, as much as things aren't going good right now, so the culture just looks like crap. Like, the culture that the Mets are building, this is a destination that players want to play for. Like, I know it's on a small scale here, but Ryan Stanek came here last year at the deadline, and he could have signed somewhere else, but he wanted to come back to the Mets because of the way they treated his family. And the Mets have that building, and then they have Steve Cohen's wallet, where we'll just outbid whoever else wants Tyler Rogers and keep him around. Helsley might be a little tricky if he wants to be like a closer again. Right. And, that might be a tricky re-sign. But I don't care if the Mets are acquiring rentals, because they could just go ahead and re-sign these guys, and it no question changes the equation if you ultimately bring these guys back and then you have them for a more extended period of time.
How good? I forgot where did you say you have Carson Bench ranked?
Three.
Okay.
Yeah.
How good? It's a really dumb question. It's a really dumb phrasing, but I think you'll get it and run with it.
Yeah.
How good is Carson Bench?
Very good. He's very good. And he's got some things to work on. There is some platoon splits a little bit with him, but it's not egregious. Like, he's hitting lefties okay, and he's mashing righties. What has stood out to me for Benj, and, he started his career in Brooklyn, and if you listen to me ever talk, and you've heard me on this show, Brooklyn it's the worst place for a left-handed hitter to play in all of minor league baseball, and that is statistically proven. Like, that, literally the worst spot. I was like, he's doing fine. Like, he's hitting the ball hard. Like, he's doing well. Get him to Double-A and watch him take off. I thought the same with Ryan Clifford last year, where his stats weren't particularly good in Brooklyn. He goes up a level and his stats take a big step forward. Bench gets to Double-A. Boy, it's almost like every day this guy is hitting home runs. And what has impressed me the most, because obviously I cover the draft as well, and last year Bench was a favorite of mine. Like, I was hopeful the Mets would have a shot at him, and it worked out that he got there, and they were able to draft him and sign him, and he's here now. But as a hitter, it's advanced approach at the plate, like some of that lingo that I'll use. But his approach was opposite field, opposite field, opposite field, and one of the biggest adjustments. And it took Brandon Nimmo forever to do it. Dom Smith never did it. Brett Beatty is kind of starting to get it, but still not quite there. You can't be an opposite field hitter at the major league level. Like, that's just not a profile you could be, because these guys are going to start jamming you inside at 98, 99, 100 miles an hour. And if you try to go the other way, you're just going to flare it to the shortstop or pop out to left field. You have to be able to pull the ball. And since getting to Double-A, Carson Bench is pulling the crap out of the ball. Inside fastballs, home runs to right field. The growth that he has had, the statistics are what they are. He's hitting like 370 at Double-A. He's got an OPS over like 1.1. He's got more walks than strikeouts. Carson Bench is the best hitter in the Mets system, all-around hitter.
Is he a true center fielder in the major leagues? I know that's the trajectory he's on. Can he play center field in the major leagues?
That's the big question. And he did not play center field in college. He was a right fielder in college, and a former two-way player. Like, they do a right field makes sense because you threw 95 off the mound. So go ahead and throw your big arm in right field.
Right.
The Mets have been impressed with his growth as a center fielder. It started off kind of rocky, but you're seeing him grasp like the reactions and the timing that you need to play center field. So I do think there is a chance that he's a center fielder. Do I think he will ever be a plus defensive center fielder? Probably not, because he's not a big time athlete. Like, he's a slightly above average athlete, but if he can handle center field with instincts and baseball IQ, I think he can handle it. But if you're looking for, a Tyrone Taylor out there, a Jose Siri out there, like, I don't think that's ever going to be in his bag. And if it ever was, you'd be talking about like the best prospect in minor league baseball, probably. Right. So there is some projection there as far as how that'll work out, but the Mets are giving him plenty of run in center field. So that they want that obviously to be the position that he figures out. And so far the returns are, from what I was told, are improving.
Okay, very good to know. Ibby, I know you want to talk to Joe, and also probably have a thing or two you want to ask Joe really quickly about Jet Williams, your number one prospect. But before we do, last question I have on Benj, and then we can move on from that, and Ibby take over on Jet Williams. Yeah. As far as Benj is concerned, if he's not, let's say this experiment, because he is still, 2 levels away from, or at least 1 level away, whatever, from the major leagues. Although this is the big developmental level at Double-A, but let's say he can't hack it as a center fielder. Where do you think the Mets then pivot to? Because look, it's clear he has a higher offensive ceiling than Drew Gilbert, let's say, but this is a guy in Gilbert who was just traded because they didn't really have a role for him. Does that become a complicated situation for the Mets if Benj can't handle center field, knowing that Nimmo and Soto are here for the long haul?
Yeah, I mean, of course it does, right? Like, they need one outfielder. They need someone to play center field. They don't need a right fielder. Eventually, Juan Soto's probably going to be like largely a DH or whatever. Like, one of those spots will open up at some point.
Right. But it just feels like Benj is coming sooner rather than later, right? There's a chance he could be on the team next year.
Very real chance. In my top 30, I do an MLB ETA for all 30 guys. And I say that with all 30 guys are not going to make the major leagues, because that's the nature of the beast. But I try to do like a projection just based on, where they currently are and all that. But I have 2026 as Benj's arrival. And I don't think the Mets are moving Juan Soto to DH in 2026. Right. I will say this about Juan Soto really quickly to step away from Benj. His defense has been fine. Like, there was a lot of conversation. Like, he's certainly not a Gold Glover, even though I think he was nominated for one not long ago. But he's fine out there. Like, he's not costing them by being the right fielder, at least not yet. But yeah, that is going to be a conversation the Mets are going to have. And, I'm not saying the Mets are trading Carson Benj, because they were not interested in trading him at this deadline. But look, eventually all these prospects are not going to end up New York Mets. They're going to be on other teams. I'm still waiting for that David Stearns, Christian Yelich trade. Whatever that version is, whether that's an ace or a center fielder or whatever position you want to name, I'm waiting for David Stearns to pull off that trade because it's going to happen at some point and it's going to cost you something good. And, not saying Benj is one of those guys, but if he's not going to be a center fielder, then the fit is certainly in question.
I could see a trade like that happening maybe this offseason, just because of
Depending
where
on
the
who's
Mets
available.
are, where their
Yeah, for
payroll is, and where some of these prospects are going to be.
And I'll tell you this. They really were trying to make big trades at this deadline. I could tell you that with some solid confidence that they were. I don't know what prospects they were floating, but they were in talks for Mason Miller. They were trying to get Sandy Alcantara. They weren't bottom feeding. They were trying at the top, but the prices were absurd. They called the Red Sox about Jarren Duran late, trying to see if they changed their mind. So they tried to do big things. So I do think that trade is coming, and it makes the most sense, obviously, to happen in the offseason. And there wasn't that big move just didn't happen this deadline other than Miller. But the Mets, frankly, as much as I'm like into their system, there was nothing they could have done to beat the Padres when they offer the third best prospect in all of baseball, plus for a reliever. That they simply couldn't touch that. So I do think that aggressive trade is coming, and I hope Carson Benj is a center fielder because he's a lot of fun to watch play.
Ibby, go ahead with Jet Williams. Joe, thank you for giving us a little bit over what we asked for.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
First bit went a little bit longer than I thought before we started talking about the prospects.
Sorry.
We'll let you get out of here after Jet Williams.
Sure.
Yeah. The only thing I really had on Jet, my new best friend Jet, which I'll talk about in a moment, but when it comes to Jet, obviously some people have had, and we've seen him play center field also. We've seen him, mix it in the outfield as well. Great speed, what have you. Size always being a question for him. And I know people in this chat have said, he could be someone that, maybe he could be the answer in center field and so on and so forth because he's been working out there. I've asked you this question in person at the QBC. I'll ask you it again so that the people here can actually hear the response. Is it a foregone conclusion for you that the future for Jet when it comes to playing, if this is the case and he's not dealt away in a bigger deal like in the offseason or what have you, is the future for Jet Williams the second baseman for the New York Mets if he does play for us?
The Mets are really exploring more versatility with Jet this year than they did previously. So when we talked at the QBC this season, obviously hadn't started yet. So they've definitely given him more run in center, and he's been fine out there. Like, I think the range plays, but overall, I personally think he is better as a second baseman. I don't know if he has the arm to handle center field full time. It's not a bad arm, but it's not necessarily an ideal center field arm. Second base just feels incredibly natural. He's an infielder by trade. He's got the lateral quickness, obviously. But I think the Mets are going to continue to be versatile with him, and you're going to kind of just put this puzzle together however the puzzle gets put together when you think over the next year, 2 years, where does everyone fit? I think Jet could play center. I think he's a better fit at second, and some people that I talked to in the game would agree with me, but the Mets are not ruling out Jet as a center fielder.
Okay. No,
so what is this best friend Jet Williams? Because you're actually not allowed to tell a story about Jet Williams without me present, because I campaigned the Mets scouting department to draft Jet Williams back in 2022. I take credit for the drafting of Jet Williams. I am scoffed at when I do, but I take credit for it. And I'm very happy for his success. But how is Jet Williams now your best friend?
I will tell you, it was a very funny story. It happened today. I was out door dashing, trying to make a little extra cash, and I get a thing to go to Jersey Mike's over here. I'm near Somerset, and obviously the Roman Ponies are in town facing Somerset, and I walk into the Jersey Mike's to pick up the order, and I'm walking towards the online pickups, and I stopped for a second because I saw something in the corner of my eye. And then I looked back, and then I looked forward, and I was like, I saw the tattoos, I saw the hairstyle, and I go, "That's Jet Williams."
Height.
No, he was sitting. He was sitting. So
there's Ibby. There's Ibby towering over Jet Williams.
He was sitting down. He was sitting down. So I walk and I stop and I go, I know that's Jet Williams. Like, I'm so much of a nerd. Like, I know that's Jet Williams. And I stop and I go, what do I do? I don't want to be weird. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, we'll walk. He's eating his lunch. I don't want to bother him. I grab the food. I walk out. I put the stuff in my car. I'm about to leave. And then I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to just, I know that that's him. And I walk back in and I go, hey guys, sorry to interrupt your lunch, but I have to know, you're Jet Williams. And he goes, I am Jet Williams. And then I said, nice to meet you, man. I wish you all the best. I can't wait to see you up at the big club. I know you guys are in town in Somerset, so I wish you all the best in that series as well. And I just want to come over and shake your hand. And shook my hand, and he said, thank you very much for the kind words. It's very nice to meet you. And then that was it. No picture, no autographs, anything like that. It's very simple. I didn't want to bother. Again, he was eating his lunch, but I thought that was really cool to just, as a Mets fan, to walk into Jersey Mike's today and see Jet Williams. I do feel bad because he was sitting with someone, and I didn't know who it was, and I felt bad about that. I didn't know who the person.
If I was there, if I was there, I could have probably told you. Jet's a great kid. I've had a handful.
Very
of
nice guy
with him. Yeah, nice kid. And I'll tell you this. Talking to people that he trains with and stuff like that. This is a baseball rat. Like he is. Yeah. Eats, sleeps, breathes. Everything about Jet Williams is baseball. So you take a guy with the natural skill set that he has with that work ethic and passion for what he's doing. I struggle to see a way that this guy is not a success at the next level. But really cool you got to meet him because he's one of the good guys, I would say, in the Mets system, which has a lot of them. But Jet definitely stands out as a really good guy, and I think fans are going to be all about his game, and it's electric to watch him play baseball.
Odd villain from the top rope asking the hard-hitting questions. Yo, Ibby, what did Jet order? A kid's meal?
All right. Well, let me tell you this, odd villain. Jet Williams may be 5'6", but he is a brick S house. Ibby, you could see his legs are like my torso.
No, he was definitely very stout, and when I shook his hand, the hands too. It's the hands, the wrists, everything. It's there. I know everyone's gonna make fun of the height and everything, but when you're built like that, you might be small in stature, but you're more stout. It definitely plays. And I've been talking about the guy for a while too. I know people give me a lot of shit because of his size and things like that, but I'm with you, Joe. I think he has a future. I'm very excited. I hope it is the second baseman for this team, but obviously we'll see what happens.
And you know what? Modern day baseball, we're beyond the point that obviously sure you'd love Carson Bench is a prototypical sized guy, right? There's value to that, but now they can tell if you can hit based on your batted ball data. It doesn't matter if you're 5'6", and Jet, he can hit the baseball. So he's a strong kid, and I feel very good ranking him number one. And I knew when I did it that I was going to get a lot of stuff because Carson Bench is dominating the AA level right now, and he should be number one. But Jet, to me, a well-rounded player, and he's having a great year at the AA level, especially for his age. One of the only players in minor league baseball with 25 plus doubles, 25 plus stolen bases, and 10 home runs. So a really good year, and cool that you got to meet him, and better you than John.
Hey, first of all, let me just say this. I have no issue with Jet Williams. I'm not sure that I like him as a prospect. I don't study prospects. I'm happy. I'm excited at the idea of seeing him on the major league team. And also, I joke around on behalf of other people. I would probably see eye to eye with Jet Williams. I'm all of 5'6.5" anyway. So, I have no issue with it. But Ibby, I think you struck a chord. I think the DoorDash portion of your story hit really hard with Chazin because he threw out $100 on the
thank you.
chat.
I appreciate
simply
it.
To say fun coupons. So
hey, man,
I think
I'm not joking. I'm not joking when I say it's tough being a teacher living in Jersey. 2 kids, wife, house. It ain't easy, man. I'm over here. I'm working. I'm trying.
No, we really appreciate it, Chaz, and thank you so much for the $100 super chat.
I feel like that guy needs to ask a question or something. For $100, can we answer a question for you?
Yeah,
He did have one.
Yeah, I do have one, and I'm going to find it. I'm going to pull it up. Hold on.
Yeah. I was going to say, he has 2 minutes for me to answer a question.
Okay, perfect. You know what? As I look for it, I do remember what the
I think it
question
was. I think it was basically asking, what's the? Could you talk about the difference between Drew Gilbert's arm and Carson Benj's arm? I think that was
That's
one
the
of them.
question.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Benj has a slightly stronger one, but Gilbert is a plus arm too. Like, one thing you have to remember, I shouldn't say have to, because frankly, I'm probably one of the few people that do. When Drew Gilbert was originally drafted out of high school, he was drafted as a left-handed pitcher. He was not drafted, not a two-way player, not an outfielder, just straight up left-handed pitcher. He went to the University of Tennessee with the intentions of being a left-handed pitcher, and just how stacked their program was, it didn't work out, and he was able to hit and found his way into there, and credit to him to being able to become a first-round pick that he was as an outfielder. So it's a strong arm. Benj was more, I'd say, more of a power arm off the mound, and has more naturally played right field, where, you know, maybe the arm strength difference isn't like here to here. It's relatively close, but Benj has the experience in right field, so the throws are more natural for him than they are maybe for Drew Gilbert. But I think it's a great question, and you know, Gilbert has a good arm. I think Benj just has a better one.
There you have it.
Fair enough.
Listen, you give $100 in a super chat, you're going to have the opportunity to have your question answered, even if it wasn't attached to a question. Joe, before we let you go, Odd Villain just said Jet Pesci, which is a hilarious comment. Joe, obviously, you know, the Mets pod is great. You and Connor do a tremendous job. But in case someone does not know where to find you, how do they find you? Where do they listen? All of that stuff before we let you get out of here.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at PSL2Flushing. Check out all my written work on SNY.TV. You could, I think, basically like search by my name and find anything that I've written on there. Certainly check out my top 30 list. I put a lot of effort into that. So we talked about some prospects on this show. The system goes way deeper than that. So go ahead and give that a read. Check out the Mets pod wherever you get your podcasts. They do ad reads for it during the game, and we had Gary Cohen on just
that was
yesterday.
Awesome.
So thank you. Love talking, awesome. Like, crazy talking to Gary, and we have a very, 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 very special guest coming on this coming week's episode. So you will certainly not want to miss that one. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. You know, love hanging out with you guys at QBC every year, and every chance we get to do something like this, it's much appreciated.
We appreciate you coming on. Speaking of the QBC, I now know I don't run the QBC or anything like that. Of course, that's up to Keith Blacknick, the media goon himself. But I do know what the date is.
Me too. I got a text about the date, and I don't think we could say that. I don't know if we can say that.
We cannot say it yet, but I think Keith said that he is going to let everybody know next week or in the next week. So QBC is happening. We now have a date. There's the QBC poster, or at least one of them behind me. So yeah, Joe, you and I only see each other pretty much once a year at the QBC, but I do look forward to it every year, as it were. Ibby, anything else for Joe before we let him get out of here?
I got nothing. Obviously, I always appreciate when Joe comes on. I love when we get a chance to open up a little bit more about prospects, because John knows I love mixing in things when it comes to prospects, as I'm trying to learn more and more about the team that I love. So having you come in, and as John says, you're the best to do it. So having you come in and be able to talk about it is always a good time. And I'm sure, getting a couple questions answered by some people in the chat as well, they're happy about it as well. So thank you, as always, for your time.
Anytime,
absolutely,
guys.
Joe.
Anytime.
We will head into the break. It'll be a quick 30-second ad spot that we need for the audio version of the show. When we come out of the break, it'll just be myself and Ibby with you the rest of the way, about 30 minutes or so. We're going to let Joe leave because he already gave us 23 minutes and counting, more than we asked him to do before we started the show. So I'm John. That's Ibby. Our guest this week, Joe Demayo of the Mets pod. He's going to get out of here. This is Till Mets Do Us Part. We will be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week. If you're watching live for the first time, you can subscribe and turn notifications on to make sure that you never, ever, ever miss an episode. And of course, if you want to take part in the live chat, which is such an important part of this show, the only way to do that is to be a subscriber on the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, especially, go ahead and throw a thumbs up, a like on the video. It helps the algorithm out, pushes this out to more and more Mets fans, helps us grow along the way. You can also follow us across all social media at Til Mets Do Us Part. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Twitter, we're on Blue Sky, we're on all of the places. And just recently we opened up a Substack, which is also where this podcast is housed. So follow us across the board. If you search Til Mets Do Us Part, I promise you will find us in every single place that you need to find us, including the YouTube channel or the Twitter handle that you're already watching this show on. We also drop as an audio podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon Music. That usually happens within a couple hours after we finish the live show here. So if you miss anything and you want to catch up, but you could only commit to the audio version, it is a great place to find us as well. And for the hell of it, whether you're on Spotify or Amazon or Apple, whatever, go ahead and throw us a review. That also helps the algorithm out as well. I don't think I missed anything, Ibby, but we got to hit him with a quick word from our friends over at Independent Safes.
Absolutely. Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. Fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And as always, $99, free shipping. Tell them Til Mets sent you. They'll take care of you. And I think everyone knows who I need to put into the safe this week, as we're going to lock it away. When it comes to independent safes, shout out to them. Throw away the key. It's the Mets. It's the Mets in general.
That's a big ass safe, man.
It's a big ass safe. We've talked to them if they have panic rooms. I think they do. It's like $25,000 for a panic room.
Cohen can afford it. He can put the entire team in a panic room.
Put the whole team in a panic room, because right now they need to be locked away, because you got to figure something out. We're watching very bad baseball. So maybe, just maybe, if we lock them away in an Independence panic room, they'll be able to talk things out, figure it out, and then I'll be able to then find said key that I threw away to let them out, and we can watch them play some good baseball again. IndependentSafes.com. Tell them Til Mets sent you.
It is hard to top that one. Game for War saying he would throw Nimmo in the safe, which, listen, Nimmo has not been good the last, I think he had at one point 6 strikeouts in a row, and he is 9 for 40. That's fair. Listen, you're putting somebody in you can put whoever you want in the safe. Armand saying, put me in the safe for going to today's game, #dumbass. That's fair. I did go to the Padres game. I went to the Mets Padres game last Wednesday. 3-hour ride down there for the Mets to get 3 hits. So 1 hit per hour of the drive for one way. That was brutal. Ibby, you know what? God, it's cliche. It's on the nose, but I'm going to do it. For me, it's Eric Chavez going in the safe. Jeremy Barnes can go with him.
You basic B.
I know. I listen, it's hard to top yours. I'm just putting the whole team in there right now. It's just oh God, I don't know. I mean, if you want to put anybody else, maybe I'll put the Cleveland Guardians pitcher in the safe just so I know he didn't get the no-hitter, but damn it, man, was that close. Look, plenty of candidates right now. Sometimes I think this is a pretty obvious thing. I think mine is a pretty obvious answer with Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. But that's the beauty of putting folks in the safe and throwing away the key, as brought to you by Independent Safes. But, listen, this time of year and then the way the Mets are playing, Ibby, I think you're justified in putting anybody in the safe that you want to put in the safe. Armand, thank you for saying Gavin Williams. I didn't say his name because I couldn't remember his name, because I watched a baseball game not 2.5 hours ago and forgot the guy's name who almost pitched a no-hitter against us, because none of these players are real, but the Mets make them all look like they're prime.
Gavin Williams is real. He's struggling when it comes to command, but not against the Mets.
It's a Gavin DeGraw. That's all I know. That's the only person. That's the only guy I know. No, Ibby, this comment came in from Chazin before. And
Yeah.
I wanted to bring it up because you and I don't have a ton of time, and shout out again to Joe Demayo for giving us more time than we agreed to. But
Yeah.
I don't agree with the last part of this, but I think there's a lot of other parts of this that I agree with, and I want to get your take on it. Chazin said, one of the biggest problems with this team is there's no leadership. There is no true leader. Leaders don't laugh when they strike out and ground into double plays. I don't care about the last sentence. I know people do, so I'm not going at Chazin when I say I don't care. Literally me, I don't care, and it's for a lot of the stuff that we talked about with Joe, where it's like, we've interacted with these guys. We know that they have a job to do. Like, Soto hits the home run and he's rounding the bases and he's smirking at the dugout. He's not smirking because he's happy that they're losing. He's not like, oh, I got the home run. It's like, we almost got no hit, bro. I got it. It's like an awkward smile. It's what can you do but laugh? So I have no issue with that. Now, from a leadership perspective, I think there are leaders, and we talked about this. Shout out to Empire State Baseball. We did a Keith Diaz did a
that was great
that I was on, and this question was asked to me, and that's why I brought it up here on this show. The Mets have plenty of leaders on the field. I'm not sure that the Mets have any clubhouse leaders right now. On the field, there's no question Lindor's a leader. On the field, there's no question Nimmo's a leader. Alonso's a leader. I think they're all lead by example type guys. But Ibby, to the point of them not having leadership, I think Chazin's onto something where I'm not sure there's a guy in the clubhouse when the doors are closed that is going to hold people accountable in a way that we will never see, but happens. Your thoughts on this?
I think that I think it's fair to say that, because I think we have a lot of guys that are lead by example on the field, go out and do, but not so much when it's, behind closed doors, holding somebody accountable and saying, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? What's your preparation? What's this? What's that? I don't know if that does exist. Again, we're not privy to those things because we're not in the clubhouse. And a lot of times those things don't come out. The only thing I can say is, if fans feel this way, it harkens back to Tommy Pham and the stuff that he said. Now, look, there's a lot of changeover from the roster from when Tommy Pham was here. But at the same time, do some of the things that he said still resonate? Maybe, if you're talking about leadership and people needing to step up and work hard. We like to assume that everybody works hard because you're a major league ball player and you want to do better and you're trying to, play to the back of your baseball card or earn your paycheck or what have you. Is it happening? I don't know. Is it fair to question? I think it's fair, because when you see something like this happen, you hope, that being the skid that this team has been on now for nearly what feels like 2 months, since they've played just as a good amount of good baseball in comparison to bad baseball, nearly. It's a fair question to ask. And I don't know if there is someone. And, I heard Keith's answer during the ESP space saying how, Edwin Diaz is someone that carries himself so well, but you can't have your closer be that guy. And I agree with him. Like, closer.
I don't even think you could have a starting pitcher be that guy unless that guy has like the gravitas of a Max Scherzer, right? Like, but that's fewer and further between, because even Jacob deGrom, as great as he was, could never be that.
No,
because he didn't have the je ne sais quoi.
No, and he was the definition of the guy. Like, I heard your answer. You're like, simple man, just goes out there and does his job. Like, again, DeGrom is the quintessential lead by example. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to dominate you, try to keep up, things of that nature. But I don't know if there is someone. Is that the difference for this team? Maybe. If this team had Tommy Pham, would it matter?
I don't think it's the difference.
Would there be a big difference?
I don't think it's the difference, but I think it is a factor going all the way back to what we were talking about, Joe, in the first half, which was, I think it's a factor in their identity. I do think it's a factor in, do I think it changes and it makes them a winning ball club and it makes them better in clutch position? No, I don't know. No, yes, there's no way to quantify it. Just the same way to say that, again, there's no way for you and I or anybody else to know if this is happening, because only the guys in the clubhouse know. And to that point, Rosie says Lindor is the leader. The problem with the team is much bigger than Lindor. Doesn't he call meetings and hold people accountable? Look, he does call the team only meetings and stuff, Ibby, but I think, and I said this in the space too, there are so many parallels to draw between David Wright and Francisco Lindor. Great ball players, Hall of Fame trajectory players, unbelievable people off the field in how they treat the media and how they are with their families. There are so many similarities. But I do think that in terms of and I think Lindor should be the captain, but I do think in terms of captainhood, I think Lindor is a little bit more Carlos Beltran by leading by example and just being a great player and playing as a great player than he is David Wright. But the problem
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I think Juan Soto is more Carlos Beltran. And I think even Pete Alonso is more Carlos Beltran. And maybe to a lesser extent, I think Brandon Nimmo is more Carlos Beltran. I think Brandon Nimmo is a little different, but when you get down to Nimmo, and this is not a knock on him as a player, Ibby, Brandon Nimmo is clearly the fourth best player on this team. Yeah. So can he, while he's in the mix, and I don't think he's excited, and it's not about being fiery and yelling. I just don't know that he has the gravitas to be that guy either, even though he maybe has the personality type that's a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Do you think that, so then do you think that when it comes to something like this, what this team or what any team is looking for, does it have to be a superstar that it's coming from?
You know, it's funny because I'm not sure that it has to come, maybe let me backtrack on that because I don't think it has to come from a superstar. And what I think I hate to say this, but I think maybe you just need somebody who is a little more fiery. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I misspoke. I kind of, your question kind of put me in the right perspective. I think you have a lot of really nice guys on this team, a lot of guys who want to be good teammates, who want to play well for each other. And I think all of that is so important. But I think sometimes you need somebody who's going to say the not necessarily about being fiery and being aggressive, but
the quiet part out loud
truths. Yes. Yeah. Somebody in the space mentioned it with, JD Martinez last year, who, JD Martinez has not found a home and he's probably going to retire. And, last year didn't even have a good year for the Mets. Superstar player at some point, not a superstar player on the Mets last year. And, he said that piece where, after the dude Lopez threw the glove in the stands, he's like, everybody thinks we're the worst team in baseball. So let's go out there and just play ball. There's no pressure on us. And that was kind of saying the quiet part out loud. Right.
Yeah.
And it didn't need to be, oh, this is bullshit. I got to stomp it. I got to throw things around the clubhouse. You don't need that. But I think you need some version of that. And the version of that could be your example, saying the quiet part out loud. Does not need to be a superstar player. Helps if it is. Doesn't
right.
Need
and I know. Yeah.
Because
I know
the Mets have no shortage of superstar players who are leaders on the field.
Right.
Lindor and Soto are leaders on the field. They do lead by example, especially Lindor. But I think you need somebody else with a different energy. And I think there's a certain
and potentially, I think if you had someone like that, be it a superstar or not, or it could just be like a really good guy that bats like 6th or 7th, that's in your everyday lineup. Maybe something like that is what helps us. And I talked about this before as well. Maybe that's what helps establish identities for the players that are within said lineup, that helps establish an identity for a team. The examples given during that space were fantastic. I think it was Edge, and shout out to him. I think he was the one who said, when you're talking about guys like, Manny Machado, Jose Ramirez, those are superstar players that have that rallying factor behind them, because when they speak, everyone listens because they know who they are, what their attitude is, so on and so forth. I don't know if that's not the way that Lindor or Soto carry themselves. It's not a knock. I appreciate and love the way both of them play baseball, but maybe they don't have that, that fiery nature to them. And I know people think that they need that, but I also think that sometimes people tend to forget that, the clubhouse is not the locker room when you were in high school or college.
100%.
It's not the same thing. Yes, I remember meetings in high school. I remember having meetings playing in my, the amateur league that I played in with, guys that were okay or what have you. But it's not like that. These are grown ass men making a lot of money, and
Dude,
it's a different type of approach. It truly is.
Yeah. And I
It's
don't
not
want to
the same thing.
oversimplify it, Ibby, and like these, like they're at work. Like I don't know what people think.
When you're
happens-
at work, when anyone is at work in the chat, also, you like when they call those meetings? You like when they call those meetings to talk about things, and you're just like, oh, morale at the job is real bad. It's like, yeah, but this meeting also could have been an email. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is just a waste of time. Like, that's what a lot. But again, for these guys, got to go out there and you got to hit. No shit. Like, what do you think I'm trying to do?
Well,
But
and Ibby,
I get the sentiment to an extent. I do.
I do. And look,
I'm it away.
I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth when I say it either, because I do think there's something amiss with the identity. And I do think that there is, and I think a part of that could be this hidden, quote unquote, behind the scenes leadership. And I think there might be a void there with, listen, guys who I was okay with letting them all walk. You know, people in the space mentioned Luis Severino. They mentioned JD Martinez. They mentioned Jose Iglesias. All guys that I was okay with letting leave. And I'm not going to go back on it now and say, oh my God, I need these guys to be a part of this team. Like, no, but I'm not sure that they replace that. And you know what? You know who's a good guy I think that fits that mold? Maybe Jesse Winker fits that mold. But the problem is he's been hurt for like 89% of the season so far. You know, so I think he could be a guy that could fill that role as a veteran presence who's a little goofy, but also super like arrogant and a little fiery. And he's just a different kind of cat. He's a different kind of personality. And I think maybe it could be a guy like him, but you can't really do that if you're spending half the time on rehab in Port St. Lucie. That's just kind of what that is, right? Okay. Sorry. Like, Clink saying, I think Jet Williams, somebody we talked about in the first half, could be a pretty good clubhouse leader guy when he gets up. Young player be damned. He seems like he has a little bit of that dog in him where he could be that guy. And like Joe called him a baseball rat, like akin to like a gym rat. Like he strikes me, not to put pressure on the kid, he's not here, whatever. He strikes me as a personality that could be that guy. That's a good one.
I think that's a good one. And to your Winker one, like the only reason I question is because sometimes when I see attitudes, I think of him more also as an on-field type, because when he's on the field,
which guy?
Winker. Like when he's on the field, I feel as though like, and other people have said this, you know, when he's not on your team, he's the asshole that you hate, but when he's on your team, he's your asshole. It's like that's the way it is. But I just think that he also, like the goofy factor that you brought up, I'm not sure if that plays outside of the field. Like I don't know if they would carry the same way, because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does carry himself the same way in the clubhouse, but I feel like he's, at least the way he comes across, it feels as though he's a very, nice guy, genuine guy, likes to joke around, and, kind of like turns off. So it's almost like, it's time to go to work, and now I'm going to be this guy and bother people because that's who I am, and that's how I thrive. But maybe when it's time to turn off, it's like, you kind of calm down. But maybe he brings it to the clubhouse. I don't know. I'm not sure. But that's like my one difference when it comes to Winker. That's just me furthering the point of, I'm not sure if that person does exist. And for a lot of people, you say someone like Jeff McNeil, who has an attitude, and a lot of people hate that he has an attitude. So it's like, you can't always please people. You really can't.
Yeah, that's fair. And look, again, I don't think anything here is changing where this team is at, but there just feels, I think we could all agree. I don't think anybody knows what it is. I don't claim to know. You don't know. Didn't sound like Joe DeMayo, who just joined us, knew. Nobody in the comments, in the chat, nobody's watching this, nobody's listening. Ibby, doesn't it feel though like something is missing? There's just a certain something missing. And I think part of it is the identity of the team.
It's the identity that you can't put your finger on as to what it is. And I just feel that, and I've said this for a while too, I think that a lot of the pieces on this team, it's the way I always frame it is, don't be afraid to dream bigger, Mets fans. And that's the way I've always put it. It's like, I feel like there are pieces on this team that they're here and you're trying your best to get the most out of it, even though the ceiling, maybe you've already reached that ceiling, or maybe they're just a dominant floor player and it's not good enough. I feel like there's a lot of changeover that still needs to happen within this lineup, even though this team or this roster, even though this team last year did go to the NLCS, and they were two games away from the World Series. I still think that there is some things that need to be shaken up. Whether it's, even though McNeil's been playing well, it's like you've seen a lot of these faces for a long time, and then you start questioning, like, well, maybe some of these things need to go in order to bring in something that actually works and allows us to get to the next level. So when we're talking about the McNeils and the Martes and players like that, it's like, well, maybe it's time to move on and get something different that allows for different looks, which can then establish said identities within the lineup, which then allows someone to be something for the team. And it doesn't help also that the kids haven't performed.
Sure.
Like that, we said, give the kids run. Let's see what they can do. But it really, let's be honest, it hasn't really worked. You had Vientos last year and it worked then, not working now. And now you look at them as a whole and you're just like, it's not there. And that's taking up a lot of your roster. So all these things are not working. This is why you have the inconsistencies, I should say, the bigger or longer inconsistencies within a game that already has inconsistencies.
Yeah, like Rosie saying, another retooling. When we say that, we don't mean rebuilding, okay? The Mets have a very solid foundation on the major league level. They do have some players that, even if they're not stars, young players that can be contributors, whether that's Vientos or Alvarez is going to be the starting catcher here for the next foreseeable future, period, full stop. He's going to contribute. Vientos might be here. He might be a third baseman. Who knows what he's going to do? Mauricio might be the third baseman. Who knows what and then they have this, you heard it from Joe, this very deep farm system of guys that are going to continue to come up. We say retooling, we mean changing the shape, the look of this team on the 26-man roster. And look, Ibby, you can look at two guys that you mentioned by name in Starling Marte and Jeff McNeil, two guys who have had pretty good years. Jeff McNeil has had an incredible bounce back year. He did what I said that he needed to do, which was either return to be the guy who hits 300, or he has to change his approach and be a little bit of a different kind of hitter. He's grown into being a different kind of hitter, and he's been a productive player for the Mets. Starling Marte has been some of the same issues where he's always hurt, but he's been a productive player for the Mets. But these are two guys that, even though they've been the two of the better stories and two of the better players on the roster, if they got rid of either one of them at the deadline, which was floated and speculated about, and there were some rumors to that, I would have been happy with. If they got rid of either one of them before the season started, which there were rumors and things were floated and it was speculated about, I would have been okay with that too. And I will be happy to move on from Starling Marte when his contract is up. And I think at the end of this season, whenever that happens, and I think when the season is over, the Mets should also look to get out of Jeff McNeil's last year if he continues to play at the level that he played at, because whether that person that takes over second base in 2026 is Jet Williams or it's Ronnie Mauricio, which doesn't seem likely, but whatever, it's Luis Angel Acuna, it's Brett Beatty, or it's somebody from outside the organization that they go get because they decide they need a major leaguer there, somebody that is more of a known commodity. I think that's a change that Mets fans should embrace, to your point, right? Like, I don't care if the second baseman next year is any of those guys, or if it's, Brandon Lau, or if it's a guy that, we're not even thinking about that could be on this team, like the way that, was it Kansas City went out and made the Jonathan India trade, right? Like, just a guy who changes the vibe. Nobody's going to be like, oh my God, this guy's a star. This guy's the best. I just think that they need to change over some of these, players that have just been here for a bit. I think you're right on that.
I just as an example, like if you swapped out Jeff McNeil and brought in, even though he went to the Cubs, like, just the point I'm trying to make, like, small things. It's not a complete retooling. It's like if you swapped out Jeff McNeil for a Willie Castro, like, it's not a world-changing move, but it's something just different. And I think that some of these things need to happen. And I think David Stearns wants them to happen too. But again, he's a little bit hamstrung when it comes to moving certain things because of, whether it's lack of market for things, because it takes two to tango. I think certain things need to be moved. I think he knows that, but he also knows that, I have what I have and I have to make it work for now until I get an opportunity to move it, be it in the off season or when an actual market, becomes established for a given player.
Ibby, we got about 12 minutes left. And I'm not sure where to end the show on. Like we can continue to muse about what the roster looks like. We can continue to muse on this thought process of identity and urgency. But I think we vented a lot. I think people in the comments have vented a lot. I think having Joe Demayo on here was probably a good break in the monotony a little bit, just from a perspective of, we did get to spend a little bit of time on some of the prospects that have nothing to do with this major league team right now, which I think is a nice reset and a nice refresh.
Oh, it was so refreshing.
And in that sense, I'm happy that we didn't try to move Joe, right? Like, because the thought crossed both of our minds of like, man, this is a show immediately after all this stuff. Now, what do we do? Don't want to, like, not that you quote unquote wasting Joe, because he's a great Mets fan anyway and a great creator anyway. He's got so much to offer, but we wanted to talk about that stuff. We were able to get to that. I think that kind of calmed everybody down a bit. But Ibby, when we look ahead, the Mets have an off day tomorrow.
Thank
then
God.
They go to Milwaukee and play the Brewers, who, for argument's sake, have been the best team in baseball for the last couple months. Then
Great
they have
pitching.
Then they have another off day. They come home. They face the Braves, who have been down, but they're going to get up for the Mets.
Always.
Then they have the Mariners, who, turned into buyers and have more of that, what you just said, great pitching. Then they have another off day, and then they go to the Nationals, who, again, the Mets should beat, but they always play up, especially in Nationals Park, and the Mets are a bad road team this year. And then they go to Atlanta, have a house of horrors there. Then they come back home, no off day, and play the Phillies, which is going to be really important. And then the streaking Marlins for 4 games. This is a very tough 3 weeks.
This is
plus weeks.
This is an extremely, extremely, extremely important stretch. And I don't want to, maybe it's improper for me to say this is the season. Maybe it's wrong to say that.
I don't think it is.
I really, especially now that you're 2.5 back, or did the Phils lost today, right? So
Phils lost, so I think it stayed at 2.5, or it's 2, or it's I think it's 2.5 game out of it's 2 games.
All right, so 2.5 games, whatever it may be. I think that I think these next 3 weeks are huge based off of the opponents, what have you, teams in there that you should beat, but also teams that you're going to battle with. Okay, teams that are pushing for October, they want to be there. Milwaukee is, to me, I'm scared. Like, I'm scared to say that this team is coming off of embarrassing baseball against Cleveland, which they should have been the ones doing the sweeping, not us being swept by Cleveland. And then to have to play a red hot Brewers team where everything is clicking, they're hitting the ball, they're pitching fantastic. They have the right McGill on their side. It's tough. And because I always say you want to start fast, and I think a series like that's very important. But to roll out all those teams that they're facing over the next 3 weeks, and if they start off on a whimper, it kind of creates that snowball of it getting bigger and bigger, which is what worries me the most. But yeah, I think these next 3 weeks, you have to play above 500 baseball, which it seems like a mountain of a task right now. But if you don't, I think you're in big trouble.
Well, it's funny. It's hard to forecast a month from now, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know where teams are going to be playing. Lots of things can change. But Ibby, we talk about that part of the schedule, the remaining 3+ weeks here in August that we just got into, but there ain't no relief coming in September. The Mets open September with 3 games at the Tigers. Then they go and play at Cincinnati. Then they go and play at Philadelphia. That's not any easier. Then they come home, they play the Rangers. Okay, maybe, again, not a world-beating team, but a team that's
playing much better, though.
Playing much better.
Yeah.
They've got pitching, whatever.
Yeah.
After that, they play the Padres, a team that has consistently had our number since the playoffs a couple of years ago. Then you play the Nationals, who, again, not a good team, but a team that seems to play up to the Mets. Now, at that point, you hope that with the Nationals being fully out of it, that they kind of roll over a bit for you. But Jesus, does anybody ever roll over for the Mets? And then the final 2 series of the year is on the road in Chicago with the Cubs, and then on the road in Miami
Oh
And
my
again,
God.
maybe Miami has fallen off the map there. At that point in the season, maybe Miami's out of it and they're dead. But
If they
again,
got a chance, though, if they got a chance to ruin it,
even if they don't have a chance themselves, if they have a chance to ruin it, didn't the Mets lose back-to-back seasons in 2007 and in 2008 against
Yes.
the Marlins when they were
Yes.
fighting for their playoff lives?
yes.
And that seems both of those teams were worse Marlins teams than what this one is shown to be so far in terms of record and going for it late and all that stuff. So, like, listen, if you're a person who says that the Mets aren't going anywhere, like some of the people in our chat have been over the last couple weeks, you're going to find out probably sooner rather than later, Ibby. You know, the Mets have played themselves in a position where every game is going to matter in August and September, more than likely, but every game is also, they've also played themselves into a position where they did squander that relief that they had.
Yes.
They did squander
Yes.
that cushion that they built. And
Yes.
look, I said it a couple weeks ago on the show, part of building the cushion early in the season is knowing that you can hit a stumbling block. But you can really, if you're going to hit a bat, like if you're going to build that much of a cushion and you're going to combine it with this much of a stumble, you can really only do it once, right? You can build a massive cushion and then play 500 for 3 months and it doesn't matter. But you can't build a massive cushion and then play under 500 for 3 months because you eradicate the cushion completely. So, you know, they're in a tricky spot, man. They're in a really tricky spot.
I mean, over their last 50 games, they've played under 500 baseball. They're 23-27. Like, it's hard to. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm not one of those people. But again, like if you don't turn things around, if you don't wake up, if you don't shake it, like I often say in a lot of my posts, like shake it off, move forward, new game, whatever it may be. If you can't do that, well then you're spiraling out and you're not going to be able to get up from rock bottom. You're going to be hanging out there for a while. So it's a big series in my opinion against the Brewers. I mean, I saw Armand's comments saying he feels like they're going to dog walk us. And I think right now that's the way I feel too, because of how much of, you know, the separate sides of the spectrum both of these teams are on. It seems like an easy way to go about it. But to Joe's point earlier too, when we saw those pitching matchups against the Yanks and how the Mets were playing prior to that series, I said the same thing. I thought the Mets were going to get dog walked by the Yanks, and they woke up and they play better baseball. Is that going to be the case here? I don't know, because this Brewers team is a lot better than what that Yankee team was. But either way, the next 3 weeks, extremely important. We'll be here the entire time to break it down for everybody. And hopefully some of the cobwebs could be shaken and, you know, the top of this lineup can wake up. But again, I'm at a point now where I said I wouldn't allow things to happen like they happened in 23 for us as a show, as fans for both of us. I'm at a point now where I say, I got to wait and I got to see it. Show me it. That's where I am. Show me you can do this. I can't just keep on saying they're going to do it. Show me you can do it.
I agree with that. I am at a point now. They have underachieved so much. I think Ibby, like 20, was it 23? Or are we talking about 22? 22?
20. I was saying 23 because we would constantly say that things would turn
Yes.
because of what they were in 22. We thought they'd be better
Correct.
in 23, and it never happened.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know there's been a lot of roster turnover. There's been a full regime change, so it's hard to compare this year to 23 because while some of the same people are here, there is so much different. But in 23, there were points where I just believed, man, Max Scherzer will get right. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
Justin Verlander is gonna get right. So-and-so's gonna get right. Like this year, I do believe, Ibby, that Juan Soto will get right. I do believe that Pete Alonso has another hot streak in him. I do believe that Lindor will get right. I do believe that Nimmo will turn it around from, you know, what has been a very productive year to a bad skid. Like Joe Demayo said, you know, Alonso's had a great season. He's had a brutal month. Like, I think some of these guys will turn it around. What I'm worried about is if they turn it around, then we never even talked about the starting pitching because I don't think it's the biggest issue on this team. But if the lineup turns it around, then will the pitching go sour? Because it seems like that happened for a bit. If the Mets could ever if they could score enough runs and they could get to the later innings with a lead, the Mets are going to win more games than they're going to lose. Their bullpen is fucking out of control good
The reason why, and everything you just said, the reason why I'm constantly comping this team to 23 and why I feel the way that I feel is because we are literally, not just us, but others as well, we are regurgitating the same things that we said then. We talked constantly in 23 about, if this team can have a complete game, when is this team going to have a complete game? When's the hitting going to start clicking? When's the pitching going to be there?
You're very right.
When is everything going? And we're doing the same thing now. The pitching has not been the problem this year. The pitching has been fine. The bullpen got even better. The Stars have been doing enough. I know people want to see more when it comes to innings. I get that, but welcome to modern baseball. It's the way it is. You have to get used to it. But we are saying everything the same exact way that we did in 23. And that's disheartening to me because it shouldn't be that way. And maybe, again, I'm sounding the same way that I did. Maybe it'll change, but I need to see it. I hope it changes. I hope it does. And I hope that when we record next week and the red light's on, we're talking more positive about the 4-2 record that the Mets had, the 5-1 record. God willing. Who the hell knows if that's even going to happen? We might be saying it's a 1-5 record. I hope it's not, but we'll see what happens in that sense. But I need to see it. I can't just sit here anymore and just say it's going to happen or they're going to turn it. I need to see it. Simple as that.
I agree with you. And what's crazy is this team has been so streaky that I could see them winning. I can see them going into Milwaukee and sweeping them just as much as I could see them going into Milwaukee and getting swept. Now, obviously, the recency bias would say, yeah, I'm leaning towards them getting swept because they've been playing like dog shit. But if they showed up in Milwaukee rejuvenated and took at least 2 out of 3, that wouldn't surprise me. This team can do it. They can get good enough to win a World Series. I said it before and I say it again. They're too good to be this bad and they're too bad to be this good.
I think you're going to see however this first game goes. I don't know what the matchup is. If someone could tell me what the matchup is for Friday, whatever the matchup is.
Senga is pitching. I know that.
Okay. So you got Senga on the bump. You better bring it. Coming off of the series sweep against Cleveland, and nearly no hit to end it. If you come out flat against a red hot Brewers team, that tells me all I need to that tells me a lot and probably all I need to know about this team based off of how you've been playing, the record I just said over the last 50 games. Like, if you come out flat after that showing against Cleveland against a red hot Brewers team, I don't want to say it. I'm not going to say it's nail in the coffin, but we're at the is it a store? Is it, I don't know if it's a casket store, but whatever it's called. Like, you're looking at,
go back to the casket store.
Whatever it is. But I feel like that's kind of the route that you're putting yourself on, because if you can't get up for the Brewers, especially like the storylines, playoffs, Alonso coming off of the bad game, like if you can't get up for that, then there's a lot of problems, a lot more than we've even covered to this point.
I agree with that. Armand coming in clutch. Friday is Senga versus Woodruff,
who's been pitching great.
Saturday is TBD for the Mets versus Henderson, and Sunday is Minaya versus
Priester.
I thought so.
Priester's been phenomenal. Not a strikeout guy, but they hit for him. I think he's won 11 games, 12 games, or whatever it is since that trade from Boston. Henderson's a good young pitcher too. And like I said, Woodruff is rejuvenated, a couple new pitches. Looks like the old Woodruff, striking out a lot of people. Like, tall task, man. You avoid Freddie Peralta, which is nice, but still, tall task.
Doesn't get Much easier though after Peralta. Ibby, we've been doing this thing for 2 hours. I think that's enough time for
I agree.
the New York Mets conversation here today. Shout out to our guest, Joe Demayo, PSL to Flushing.
Love you,
on
Joe.
Twitter. And of course, co-host of the Mets Pod, which is powered by SNY. Him and Connor Rogers do a terrific job. Like he said on the show, the newest episode, which dropped yesterday or this morning, they have an interview with Gary Cohen. I think they do that once a year now, it seems like, or once in the offseason, once during the season, which is great to talk to Gary. Go give it a listen. I listen pretty habitually to the Mets Pod. I have not listened to that one yet, but they do a great job. Joe gave us more time than we ever asked for, and that was so gracious of him to do that. Ibby, look, it's the therapy session. This is what we do. This is the team we love. This is the team we talk about. We're going to be back here next week, win, lose, or draw, whether they win the next, whatever it is, till then, 6 games, or lose the next 6 games, or some combination in there of wins and losses. We're going to be here doing what we do, and we hope that you guys will be here too. I know it's a little tough sometimes after a demoralizing series and a demoralizing loss. Our numbers did take a hit. You know, we're over the 200 viewer threshold right now. But again, last week we were at like triple that and more in terms of where people thought, because part of that was the excitement of the trade deadline, but also part of that was the team was playing better too. And you know what I mean? Like it's a bit of a bummer that the Mets are on the skid that they're on right now, but still 40 some odd games left, basically 2 months. And look, Ibby, this has been a very much not rose-colored glasses episode, and it shouldn't be. The Mets deserve a lot of fucking criticism for where they are right now.
Got to keep it real.
Myself included, you included, Joe included. People are upset. People are frustrated, and I think they have every right to be. But the one thing I will say is just a little bit on the antithesis of that is in 2 months and change, we hope longer than that. We hope 3 months, but in 2-ish months, the weather's going to get colder, baseball is going to be over, and you're going to be sad as a baseball fan. So try to find the thing that will, try to find the joy. Nobody likes watching a baseball team the way the Mets have been over the last couple of weeks and the way the Mets have been showing you for different parts of all season. But, when the season's over and back east where you guys are and it gets cold and it snows, everybody's going to be upset that the season's gone. So, just try to take that in a little bit of perspective, I guess. But other than that, all the criticism is fucking warranted because they suck right now.
It's been rough sledding, but again, we appreciate everyone that came out with us today. Shout out to Joe. Always love talking ball with him. 225 was the peak for today's show. Appreciate all of you. Like I said, make sure you hit the thumbs up, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll throw it to my partner to close things out. But as always, let's go Mets.
Can't say much more than that. If you missed any of the show, you can go back and watch it in its entirety on this same YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Til Mets Do Us Part. Remember to follow us across social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, now on Substack. We're working hard on the Substack side, trying to find some unique content that we can bring just to Substack subscribers. So jump over there, follow us. The audio version of the show will drop in a couple hours. That's on all the places that all the likely culprits, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Make sure, however you choose to ingest this show, just understand that we appreciate that. Everybody who listens, everybody who watches, everybody who comments, everybody who does everything with the show since day one. We appreciate all of you guys. And hopefully when we're talking next week, things are a bit better. Until then, I'm John. That's Ibby. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. We'll see you next week. Peace.